Well, greetings, everybody. This is David Karchere speaking to you from Sunrise Ranch in Loveland, Colorado. I apologize that we've had some technical difficulties, but I'm here ready for this webinar, and I sure hope you are too. So this is such an exciting topic for me, and I know it's vital for anyone. Finding compassionate connection to self, to others, and the world. And that is such a vital topic because all kinds of bad things happen in our human lives when we're not compassionately connected, when we're not connected to ourselves and others and then the world around us. I have this lovely photo of a reservoir that's right here at Sunrise Ranch. And it's a photo I took a couple of years ago. It portrays just the beautiful waters of Colorado on this reservoir. And I've chosen that photo because I do believe that water is symbolic of the nature of the emotional body. And our emotional body, or our heart, not our physical heart, but our feeling heart, is such a key component of how we feel connected. We feel connected when our heart is online and when it's welcomed into our human experience. And we know there's something about the way the heart can function that it can connect us to another person. And so today on this webinar, we're going to take the opportunity to explore just how that works in our experience. And I hope you'll find, as I have, as I've explored this material, that there are some things that will come to you about how we work as human beings that may be surprising. And I do think that we're learning and we're growing when we get surprised. So I do hope there'll be some surprises in this for you. I know there was for me as I prepared for this webinar. I began to think about what it is that the emotional body is offering into our human experience. I want to talk about our culture and the culture that we all grew up in, and about prevailing attitudes towards our feeling realm. I'm beginning here with another photo, this one that includes something under the water and then above the water. You see the beautiful mountains, I hope. I hope you're all able to see the presentation I'm offering here visually. And so you're looking at what is happening under the water and then something that's happening above the water. And I think the feeling experience is like that. We know that the oceans of the world span the world, and the continents are like islands in the ocean of water that's around the world, and we identify them as separate oceans, like the Atlantic and the Pacific, as if they were really separate bodies of water. But by the very nature of water, it all flows together. And in this photo, if you look here, there are all kinds of lovely little fishes swimming. So we know happening in the water just as there are things happening in our own emotional experience. And if you look more carefully, there's a shark lurking under the water. And that's also symbolic, because we know that there are things that are lurking in our emotional experience that are difficult for us. There are memories of the past. There are hurts of the past that somehow get lodged in our own feeling experience. Our feeling experience includes feeling or emotional memory. And current experience can trigger the emotional memory. Not always the actual memory, so like a visual memory of something that happened, but nonetheless, the feeling memory can get triggered. And just like that shark in this photo, that's not always a happy thing for us. And so that means that in an attempt not to be sabotaged by our feeling experience, we sometimes attempt to box it up, to put it someplace where we're not so vulnerable to what we're feeling. On this next slide, I have a depiction of how we are made as a human being. So within the four walls of our human experience, we have the emotional dimension along with our mind, or the mental dimension, to how but we're also a feeling being. So all that's going on, and then of course, the most obvious part of how we're made is our physical experience. We're having a physical experience, and we're feeling things that are happening in our body. We also have a spiritual experience, or a spiritual nature, meaning that there's part of us that is not just defined by what we're thinking or feeling. And this part of us that houses, that is the home for the sovereign soul that we are, and that is the part of us that connects us with other sovereign souls and with all of being, actually, with the whole spiritual dimension of being. So here are four dimensions to how we're made as a whole person. And over the last 30 years, as we've explored holistic health and we've learned what it means to be a whole person, we understand that all these dimensions of who we are has to be online. It's not a new thought that they're all there. But I know that in the past several decades, we've become more and more aware that it takes all of us being online to be a whole person. But what happens? Here we are as a whole person. We were certainly born as a whole person into the world. And yet, as we enter adulthood and we look to be what we think of as a functional adult, we go to have our first job, or we enter into relationship, we interact socially, we find that there's so much happening under the water, in the waters of the emotional body. And we get told, well, we're being socially inappropriate because our feelings are erupting and we're expressing our feelings. Or we get told at work that we need to rein in some particular emotion. Or we're in relationship and the feelings that we're having are somehow sabotaging that relationship. And so what happens? What would any normal person do? Seemingly a normal thing, which is we tend to close off the feeling realm that seems causing us trouble. And so there's an attempt in Western culture particularly to go through life limiting the emotional range of what we're feeling. And the idea is that we will cope better with the world in which we're living, either the individual world or the world at large, if we ignore the signals and the gifts, actually, that are coming from the feeling realm. But something else happens when we close off the emotional body, when we dishonor it, when we shame what we're feeling. And our connectedness ends up being closed off as well. We end up feeling alienated, and something happens to the innate spiritual experience that we're having. You know, a young person comes into the world having an innate spiritual connection. They're not trying to be spiritual, but their emotional body, in a subconscious kind of way, has that little baby or the young child plugged into the spiritual in a beautiful way. And then as the emotional body gets shut down, something else is getting shut down. If the emotional body is the reservoir of feeling connection, then the connection to the spiritual is getting shut down as well. And we're left then to navigate our world in a thinking kind of way, thinking about what's happening in the physical world, our own physical body, also the physical world all around us. We're left to be clever and perhaps even manipulative on a bad day. And we're trying to navigate everything that's happening in the physical world around us, but without the benefit of a feeling connection and without the benefit of what rightly is present in the spiritual dimension of who we are. I'd like to go back to a slide that I have here for you, which describes 4 archetypes that are present in the human experience. Because we not only have a mind, but we have a sense of ourself as a magician or as a thinking person in the mental dimension of who we are. And we not only have a spiritual dimension, but we have a sense of our own sovereign soul present in the spiritual dimension of who we are. And then we have a physicality, but we also act as a warrior in the world, as a spiritual warrior, through our physicality. And then there's the feeling dimension of who we are. And the archetypal experience in that feeling realm is of the lover, or what is sometimes referred to as the inner child. So there is this lover dimension to us that when the emotional body is getting shut down, that lover quality to who we are is getting shut down. And when I speak of the lover, I'm not just speaking about the romantic lover, the lover in some kind of romantic relationship. I'm talking about that dimension of who we are, who is a lover with all the dimensions of the human experience. Who hasn't walked out on a spring day and just fallen in love with what is present in the natural world that's blossoming and blooming in spring? I know that's true right here where I live at Sunrise Ranch, where all the fruit trees are in blossom all over the ridge and back of my home. The wild plum is in blossom, and the fragrance of that is everywhere. And the lover in me is just swooning all over this beautiful, beautiful nature that's around me. And yet, in the world in which we live, where people are resorting to navigating the physical world, they're trying to be the controlling magician, which ultimately goes to the dark magician, who is manipulating the physical world around them. So here is the plight of the culture that we're in, and you can reflect for yourself to the degree to which you've been afflicted with this culture, and it's come into your own experience. So what to do? How do we find a compassionate connection with self, with others, and with the whole world around us? I have this wonderful illustration that comes from a book that depicts some of the King Arthur legend. I had the great joy as a young person, as a boy, to have my gone around the world. There are all kinds of versions of this story, and I've come to believe that we all have the right to tell the stories of the legend in our own way, from the standpoint of our own culture. But here is this legend of the Lady of the Lake, such a powerful image And there's King Arthur, who represents the sovereign, the king. And he's coming to find his empowerment as a king from the Lady of the Lake. And who is that behind him? Well, it's the magician. It's Merlin, who has guided him to come and receive Excalibur, the sword, and the sheath that Excalibur is in from the Lady of the Lake. What is this symbology that's just compelling? What is this story telling us? Well, more to the story. Arthur is on the shore before this scene that you see here depicted. Many noble men have come to the banks of this lake and sought the sword Excalibur, only to find that one of two things happens. One, as they near the sword and the hand extended with the sword in it, the sword and the hand recedes back into the lake. And so what is this saying? That for many, the waters of the emotional body are not willing to give us empowerment as sovereign in our realm, as the king and queen of our own sphere, receiving that love deep down into them without any kind of defense or resistance. And what is that little baby giving back? They are giving back their own response in love. And that response is giving back emotional connection. When we receive love to our own heart, the gift we're giving back is emotional connection. That happens between two people, where love is poured from the heart of one into the other, and that other person is giving back emotional connection. And so if we find that we're living a life that's void of connection, if we find that our mind is working overtime, trying to work out all the details of our life, and it's just not coming together, it may be that we're trying to do that as a disconnected self. And you have to honor the Lady of the Lake to receive the gift of empowerment. The sovereign self is empowered when there's emotional connection. And when you are connected with another person, you know that. When you are connected within yourself, so when your feelings are connected with your sovereign being, then your sovereign being has your feeling dimension on board. And that feeling dimension is like the waters or the oceans of the world. It's connecting you with all of being. Have you ever noticed that at a feeling level, we are connected with other people? Feelings are contagious. What somebody else is feeling is resonating with you, and what you're feeling is resonating with them. So when your sovereign self is connected emotionally, you're not only connected with self, but then because you're connected into the emotional body, which you're sharing actually with other people, because you're connected with self, you're also connected with others. I think sometimes this plays out between men and women. How many men have heard from their life partners or from somebody they were simply going out with that they were emotionally disconnected? They get told they need to connect emotionally. But so often for us as men, we think about that and We have no idea what to do. It's a nice thought, but how does it happen? Well, it happens because our own feeling nature is honored. Now, honoring our feeling nature doesn't mean that we're going to live the rest of our life out of our feelings and that all we are going to be is a feeling being. No, it just means that we've honored what we feel. We've acknowledged it. We've given it a place in our life. And when we honor the feeling realm, it gives something back. It's very important. It gives us back connection. Now, this story of King Arthur has more to say about what happens when the emotional body is honored. I want to take a look at what happens when the warrior in us, which is the part of us that's living in the physical world, honors the emotions and gives the gift that the warrior has to give to the emotional body. If you're a warrior in the world in any way, so if you have a job, if you are creating something important in the world, if you are presenting something to the world in any kind of way, you know that it's important that the emotional body is honored. And as a warrior, how do we honor our own emotional body? We don't honor it by cutting it off and ignoring it and pretending we don't have feelings. That's not how we honor it. We honor it by protecting it, by being a warrior in the world who protects the feelings that we're having. Doesn't necessarily expose every last feeling that we're having to the world around us. But we protect the feelings that we have. And if we protect our feelings, something happens in the feeling realm. There's a gift that's given back. And what is that gift? It's a gift, again, that's given by the Lady of the Lake. It's a gift of courage or encouragement that's given back from the emotional body, from the lover to the warrior. Archetypally, this is portrayed in the stories as the knight protecting the feminine. This is chivalry. It's the chivalry of the knight who protects the maiden, and then the maiden or the queen, but the feeling body then empowers the knight. And here's an illustration that is depicting exactly that. This is Lancelot being empowered by the feminine. So he's empowered, perhaps he's carrying the locket of the maiden on his heart. The very word courage has within it the word for heart. So when we, as a warrior in the world, man or woman, are honoring our own heart, not shaming ourselves for having feelings, not exposing our feelings or the delicacy of what we feel to the world, but when we're honoring it and protecting it, our feelings are with us and they're behind us in the actions that we're taking. And now our feelings are full of heart, and our actions are full of heart. And our actions themselves are actually connecting us to other people. That's the difference between being a tyrannical warrior and a spiritual warrior who carries the heart protected behind the actions that are being taken. And that heart that's behind the actions is connecting the warrior to his world. He's not the tyrannical warrior, but he's the bold warrior who's willing to take strong action in the world for the sake of protecting the inner, the heart realm, not only of himself, but of all others, and serving the sovereign, serving the realm. So what really surprised me most was exploring exactly what it was that the emotional body is giving to the mental. In other words, to the mental awareness that a person has, to the intellect, or archetypally, the magician. So what is it that your emotional body is giving to you when it's honored? Well, first I want to talk about how we dishonor the emotional body. We dishonor the emotional body with our mind, with our intellect, when we judge what we're feeling. We feel something and we say, we shouldn't be feeling that. Men are notorious for doing this with feeling fear. Oh, we feel fear. I shouldn't be feeling fear. Oh, really? You are feeling fear if you're feeling it. What's the point in saying you shouldn't feel it? We shame ourselves. We shame our sons for feeling fear. What happens to the emotional body when it is shamed, when it's criticized for what it feels? It goes running. No place to be found in the human experience. In a similar way, women find that they get shamed for being angry. So a woman faces a difficult situation, something happens to her, there's something difficult to face. She needs to be a warrior in her world and face what is there to be faced, whatever challenge it is. And then she's criticized. She has the thought maybe within herself or from another person. We usually learn this from other people. She has the criticism of what she's feeling of her anger. No, you shouldn't feel anger. Typically in our culture, women are shamed for being angry, where men are shamed for being fearful. And so what happens? The power that's within the emotional body shrinks back and leaves the woman. And now she's left to face the world that she's in without the power that's moving in the emotional body that would empower the warrior that she is. In all kinds of ways, this happens culturally in the world in which we live. And you would be an unusual person if some of that culture hadn't seeped into your psyche. If in some way you didn't have a habit mentally of shaming what you're feeling. What happens when we honor and accept mentally what we're feeling? We're willing to see it without criticism, without judgment. We become an honorable witness. We become an honorable witness to our emotional experience. And when our emotions are witnessed in an honorable way, they show themselves. This happens within us, but it's a pretty hard lesson to learn just within yourself. Maybe you can find somebody who is willing to witness your emotions, someone who you could share the secret parts of what you're feeling with. You'd be surprised what happens. What happens in the emotional body when it's witnessed by another and allowed to be exactly what it is. It comes forth, it shows itself. It's in relief, actually. So if we can learn the experience of having somebody else help us with that, somebody else who will be an honorable witness to our emotional experience, we can learn to do it for ourselves, to be a witness to our own emotional experience, and also be a witness to the emotional experience of others. When we're doing that, we say, I see you, I understand, I see you. And then what is it that the emotional experience is giving back? It's revealing to us what is there. So what's obviously there in our emotional body, as I was saying earlier, is the memory of pretty well everything that has happened in our life. There's the subconscious fact memory, some of which disappears over time. But there's also the feeling memory that's lodged there in the emotional body. So initially what gets shown is all the things that are there that have a chance to be seen and witnessed without judgment. And when they're seen and witnessed, then the individual can release all of those wounded things, all those knots of the heart. When they're seen, they can be relaxed and let go of. But actually, there's far more that's being revealed than our own wounds or the difficult memories out of our past. Because our emotional body is psychic. It's literally psychic. We are at that level of our being, we are in psychic connection with other people. Remember, this is the waters, the oceans of the world. It's the oceans of the human world. In your heart, you are connected to other people. In some way with all other people, but certainly with all the people who are directly in your life. All of their energy, particularly their emotional energy, their pattern is showing up in your heart. And so when you're witnessing your own feelings, you are witnessing at the same time, if you can discern it, what is happening emotionally in the people who are around you, in your psychic connection with those people. So when you feel something, you may have the thought, oh, this is out of my past. And it may be. It may be a feeling memory that is personal to you, but it may also be something that somebody close to you is feeling, that you're seeing, that you're perceiving, that is being revealed to you. You are now connected to those people who are close to you in a profound way. And you are becoming not only emotionally connected in a way that you don't know, you're becoming conscious, because in honoring the Lady of the Lake and honoring the emotional body as an honorable witness, it is revealing to you of all that is there. That's what blew me away when I began to ponder and meditate deeply on these things. I began to ask myself, well, what is it that's happening as I am an honorable witness to my own feeling experience? There's a revelation that's happening, a very deep revelation. It's a life journey to be discerning of what it is that's being revealed, to understand it. Do you think this might have anything to do with emotional intelligence? Does it have anything to do with how you navigate all the relationships that you have? Well, it helps to navigate if you become consciously aware of your connections. If you're finding a compassionate way to be connected, not a judging way, not a shaming way, with the feeling experience of other people and of yourself. I think for most people, our fear is that if we actually got in touch with what's happening in the emotional body, our own or another's, that we would be like one of those noblemen looking for the sword who drowns in the lake. But actually, if we are empowered, if we stay in our sovereignty, we don't just dive into the emotional body. If we keep our perspective as a witness, we're not just diving into the emotional body, but we're honoring it and letting it play its rightful part in a creative human experience. We're finding compassionate connection with ourselves, with others, and with everything around us. What we're feeling is connected to all of creation, actually. On a beautiful spring day, when my heart is leaping at what's happening on the ridge out behind where I live, I am emotionally connected, not just to myself, not to other people, just to other people. At a feeling level, I'm now connected to all of creation. I say that we starve for all this, that we starve for emotional connection. And when it isn't there in a healthy, when it's not there in a healthy way, we go looking for it in unhealthy ways. What happens to a person who's feeling emotionally disconnected? You know, there's a cheaper version of all the things that I've been speaking about. There's a cheap version of emotional connection. You know what they call it? Addiction. Addiction. Like, addiction is an attempt, if we can see this in a compassionate way, addiction is an attempt to feel emotionally connected. I know what I'll do. I'll just drink a martini. I'll just snort some Coke or blow a joint. And there's the illusion of emotional connection in doing those things. So I'm not here to be on a tirade on substance abuse. I'm just saying that we can get into addictive patterns when we're trying to connect emotionally and we're not actually feeding it with love from sovereign being. Available within the sovereign being we are is a profound ability to love. We have that. And we have available within our own emotional body a profound ability to receive love if we will only open ourselves to it. And I say, how much of that do you want? And in what way do you want it? Because if you starve yourself of it, if you want it, but then you starve yourself of it, you have two really bad choices. You can get it in an addictive way. And you know, most human experiences can be turned into an addiction. Sex can become an addiction. The reality of sex, the truth of sex, is a beautiful thing. But people can go after sex on an addicted basis that doesn't really give the emotional connection that the person is looking for. But if they starve themselves of that emotional connection for too long, they can just go looking for it in a sexual addiction or a substance addiction, as I've mentioned. Even something so beautiful as running can become an addiction for somebody, not really giving them emotional connection with their own body and with the creation around them. But it can give them an addictive high. It's a substitute for the real thing. So that's the first bad choice. If you're starving yourself emotionally, you can go to addictive behavior. Well, ultimately, that leads to really bad places for people. And I say that with compassion. But you might say, for an addicted person, what are they to do? What's their choice? If they're not feeding themselves, nurturing their own emotional body, it seems like there's no other choice but then to become addicted to something. Because the second choice is even worse than addiction, which is to shrivel up and die emotionally, which is no fun. Like, there's no fun in the shrinkage of the emotional body, because guess what? Our pleasure centers rely on a connected emotional experience. The empowerment of our whole human experience depends on a healthy, thriving emotional body. And if we don't learn to let it thrive on a healthy basis and contribute to the whole system, then we're left with those two bad choices: addiction or shrivel up and die emotionally. Now, you may think I'm putting that dramatically, but I'm telling you that if you know people who are living an addicted pattern of any kind, that's what they're facing. That's the awful choice that they're facing if they don't find how to honor the emotional body, to nourish it from the standpoint of their spiritual experience, their sovereign self who lives in the spiritual, to honor it from the standpoint of the warrior in the world that they are, so that they're protecting it, and to honor it in their thoughts, so that they become a compassionate, honorable witness to their own feeling experience and the feeling experience of others. When you honor the emotional body, it gives back and finds its balanced place in the wholeness of who we are as a human being. Like most of you, my learning of this is the hard way. And the hard way is the way of seeing the futility of trying to manage a human life mentally. And yes, the mind has a remarkable role to play in orchestrating the wholeness of our being and the wholeness of our life. But alone is desperate and futile and unable to manage our life into wholeness or happiness or fulfillment. So it is out of the desperation of seeing that I saw that something had to crack open emotionally, that I had to honor my own feeling experience. And within that feeling experience that seems so daunting, that has all these lurking sharks there, as the photo depicted, is actually unquenchable joy. We are at our root, at our heart, beings of joy. But that joy is an emotion that is lying at the depth, at the heart of hearts of the emotional body. But you can't let that joy out if there isn't an honoring of all that is there. If we do that, I'm not saying that all the sharks that are present go away, but maybe they don't bite us so hard when they're being honored. They have a way of being chased away by the healthy, vibrant, joyful heart that emerges when the heart is honored. And the wounds of the past that are in the feeling memory, maybe they don't disappear, but they become less and less daunting, less and less daunting when they are fed by the love of the sovereign being that we are. Much the same way that if we had a child who was afraid, we would very likely put our arms around that child and say, "It's okay. You are loved." We would tell them that we will be a warrior for them. We will protect them. We're an honorable witness, a compassionate witness to their fear. We're not shaming them for feeling afraid. No, we're here witnessing them feeling afraid, telling them that it's okay. And we see them. We see them for the beautiful being that they are. Well, I think we're covering at least the beginning of the ground that I wanted to cover. This has to do with emotional and spiritual intelligence as a whole being. This is my passion. I love to share this material and develop it with other people. I love to see what happens in someone's life when these very simple primal ideas come to light and they see them. And they not only see them as an idea, but they see their application in their own life. When all this comes together, the emotional body is bringing us encouragement. It's revealing what's within it. And it's connecting us emotionally to all that's around. I call this primal spirituality. Primal just simply means first. It is our innate and inbuilt spirituality. We came into the world spiritual, and we'll never be more spiritual than that day we were born. But sometimes in a person's life, they lose their spiritual connection in the way that I've described. And so it has to be renewed. It has to be strengthened. I'd like to invite you to a course that I'm offering. That course is called Blessing and Understanding. It is the first and oh so important step in finding our primal spirituality, in reconnecting. Blessing and understanding is about the heart. It is about honoring from the standpoint of sovereign being and loving from the standpoint of sovereign being, and then understanding from the standpoint of the mind, being an honorable witness to the feeling experience. So we will be spending 4 days at Sunrise Ranch going deeply into this experience and this knowing and understanding. The deep experience of blessing, the deep experience of understanding ourselves, understanding each other, being an honorable witness to others. It will be an amazing journey with people who share a passion to reconnect with their primal being, their primal spirituality. People who are really interested in becoming emotionally intelligent and spiritually intelligent. And when I'm talking about spirituality, I'm not talking about my spirituality or yours. I'm talking about the spirituality that we are born with. It's inbuilt. It is not a pet spirituality. It's the spirituality that's within and at the beginning of all true religion and all true spiritual paths. I'm not talking about a branded spirituality. I'm talking about the reality of it within you and within me. Here's something else on the nature of primal spirituality. It is the innate spirituality of all humankind. This is the reality behind all the, excuse me, I can't see part of my, there we go. Behind all the world's religions and spiritual paths, it is the key to our conscious function as creators and our access to universal love. It is the remedy for the ignorance, dysfunction, and self-sabotage that afflicts humanity. Primal spirituality courses teach enlightened principles of emotional and spiritual intelligence. I gave you a website address. It was a little bit long, so if you didn't get a chance to write it down, I'll give you a simpler one, and that is simply sunriseranch.org. And if you go to that website, it's very easy to find the Primal Spirituality courses. It's referenced right there on the home page. And we'll be doing the Blessing and Understanding course in June, and I'm going to get somebody to remind me of the date. So I'll give you the date of it. It begins on a Tuesday evening and runs through Saturday at 6 o'clock. So this is finding compassionate connection to self, to others, and the world. I trust you've had a surprise or two awaken in your understanding in this time. I trust you've had some insights in what's at work for you in this realm of compassionate connection and what's at work for others in your world. And I hope you have some starting places for yourself in finding compassionate connection. If you think about the people who are around you and how you relate to them, then think about opportunities you have in very simple, easy ways to pour love into their heart. It may just be by a smile, a kind word, or by some random act of kindness that you show toward them. That you unleash the great power and the great gift of the love that you have in your sovereign self to give. It may be a witnessing of some raw emotion of somebody close to you, and just being with it, as hard as that might sometimes seem to be. Just being with it, not judging, not criticizing, seeing what's happening, and then being an honorable witness to them. Or it may be an act of protecting the heart of another person, seeing them there in their vulnerability, in their rawness, but not exposing them to the harshness of the world, but being a shield for them. So some simple things to try in your own life experience. So here's the date for Blessing and Understanding, May 16th. So that's the Tuesday evening that it begins. And I know a number of us are already planning on gathering and sharing that time at Sunrise Ranch here in Loveland, Colorado. I hope you can make it. I hope you can be with it. I know it's going to be a profound experience. So join me and the other people who are part of the faculty and the other people who will be part of this great course. And I offer you my blessing as you find your compassionate connection with yourself, to others, and to the world. Thank you for joining me today.